today in media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4NEWS, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to bring about the impact of COVID-19. And today, our subject is COVID-19 impact on environment. But before I will start and come on the subject, I would like to inform that today India grieves the passing away of former President Bharat Ratna Pranav Mukherjee, a scholar par excellence, a towering statesman who was admired across the political spectrum and by all sections of society. President Pranav Mukherjee was once a professor. He had taught political science at the Vidyanagar College in South 24 Parganas, West Bengal in 1963. He had also worked as a journalist with a local Bengali newspaper named Deshar Dak. In 1984, Mr. Mukherjee was voted the best finance minister in the world by Euromoney magazine. He was the only finance minister to have presented 7 budgets. He was the only finance minister to serve the post both in the pre-liberalization and post-liberalization eras. We pay our heartfelt condolences. Now I am coming to the today's topic, that is impact on environment. The environment and the economy are really both two sides of the same coin. If we cannot sustain the environment, we cannot sustain ourselves. Environment is the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. Environment is a place where different things are, such as a swampy or hot environment. It can be living, biotic, or non-living abiotic things. It includes physical, chemical, and other natural forces. Living things live in their environment. They constantly interact with it and adapt themselves to conditions in their environment. If the environment, there are different interactions between animals, plants, soil, water, and other living and non-living things. Environment includes the living and non-living things that an organism interacts with or has an effect on it. Living elements that an organism interacts with are known as biotic elements, animals, plants, etc. Abiotic elements are non-living things, which includes air, water, sunlight, etc. Things in the natural environment that we value are called natural resources. For example, fish, insects, and forests. These are renewable resources because they come back naturally when we use them. Non-renewable resources are important things in the environment that are limited, for example, ores and fossil fuels after a few thousand years. Worldwide spread of COVID-19 in a quite short time has brought a dramatic decrease in industrial activities, road traffic, and tourism. Restricted human interaction with nature during this crisis time has appeared as a blessing for nature and environment. Reports from all over the world are indicating that after the outbreak of COVID-19, environmental conditions, including air quality and water quality in rivers, are improving and wildlife is blooming. India has always been a hub of pollution with huge population, heavy traffics, and polluting industries, leading to high air quality index AQI values in all major cities. But after declaration of lockdown due to COVID-19, quality of air has started to improve, and all other environmental parameters such as water quality in rivers have started giving a positive sign toward restoring. After the lockdown was put in place in many countries, there was lesser traveling done by people, whether it be by their own cars or by trains and were closed down and not allowed to function. This in turn led to the pollution in the air dropping significantly as there was a marked decline in nitrous oxide emission. And today, to discuss about this, the COVID-19 impact on environment, we have very elite panel. I would like to introduce my first guest. He is Dr. C.M. Joy. Dr. Joy was Associate Professor of Sacred Heart College, Kochi. He is the former Registrar of Kerala Forest Research Institute, Pichi. He is PhD in Environmental Studies from Cochin University of Science and Technology. He is the expert member in the committee issuing tree cutting permission for the trees growing in public places at the Ernakulam District Panchayat area, Kerala State Forest Department from 2010. He is also University Grants Commission Observer, National Eligibility Test for JRF and Lectureship. He was the member working group on environment, 13th Plan, Kerala State Planning Board, Government of Kerala from 2016 to 17. He has written 6 books and 40 articles published in national and international journals. He wrote about 1,100 articles in newspapers and magazines. He has guided 2 PhDs and 6 MPhils. Welcome, Dr. Joy, on our show. Dr. Joy, you know, today the COVID-19 has engulfed the entire world. And as we all observed and we have experienced that because of the lockdown, the pollution has come down heavily. Even the water, even the Ganges River, which was a bane of contention that how it can be cleaned, has become quite clear. Some reports says that up to 70% it was cleared, even Yamuna River and other rivers. And it is a very, very positive impact on the pollution or the environment. But now we would like to know your views that COVID-19 impact on environment. Dr. C.M. Joy, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goel. Pandemic COVID-19 is an unparalleled economic shock which threatens development hopes and gains. At the same time, 2020 is considered as the super year of nature. Coronavirus pandemic set to cause largest ever annual fall in carbon dioxide. It has given rise to a greener global future. Volume of global goods export in 2020 could fall to a level last seen in the middle or late 2000s, according to WTO. COVID-19 disconnected national markets and there was a break in supply chain. COVID-19 proved that everything on our planet is interconnected and we are the part of the equation. According to NASA and the European Space Agency, quarantines and travel ban reduced greenhouse gas emissions, especially carbon dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, aerosols, and particulate matter. There is a drop in air pollution, no doubt. River waters, especially in rivers such as Ganga, Yamuna, Kaveri, becomes clean and clear. Beaches are cleaner. Noise pollution reduced. Marine life visibility increased due to decline in fishing. Animals have been spotted, moving freely in cities. Sea turtles returning to areas they once avoided to lay their eggs due to human interference. Now plants grow better due to cleaner air. Illegal deforestation operations reduced. COVID-19 is giving nature's message, that is biodiversity loss and wildlife trade are the causes of pandemics. In many countries, administration itself allowed companies to break pollution laws during pandemic. On the basis of COVID, many industries requested governments for lifting the ban on single-use plastic. However, European Union dismissed that request. Earth Overshoot Day, that we know that we are the overexploitation of ecosystem resources than its production. That is the Earth overshoot. Last year it was on July 29, and this year it comes only on August 22. That means there is an extended 24 days. So that means that's a good sign, because that is because of the resources are not utilized when compared to other years. When coming to the air pollution level, we can see in China it is reported during the March to April, 25% of the carbon emissions reduced, and 50% of oxides of nitrogen emission also reduced. That is saving 77,000 lives over 2 months. We know that in India, in Ghaziabad, that is in 2019, AQI, air quality index in India, was maximum there. That is the Ghaziabad in Western UP. And now the AQI is reduced. And particulate matter also reduced to for 85%, reported by Central Pollution Control Board. And we know that in Kochi and Trivandrum, February to April to 2020, AQI in Trivandrum was 89.18, and Kochi it was 83.11. Whereas in May and July 2020, AQI in Trivandrum is 59.75, and in Kochi it is only 48.6, about 50% reduction. And also in New York, 50% carbon emission also reduced. And when we can see this case of New Delhi, AQI in 2019 was 200 in New Delhi. In 2020 is average is now 20 only. See the difference. And also from many places, because of the atmosphere is very clear. Even from Jalandhar we can see the Himalayas. And Eiffel Tower is reported. Even from several kilometers away, that St. Cloud, we can see the Eiffel Tower. When coming to the rivers, see South Asian dolphins, they reappeared in Ganga at Kolkata. That reappearance is after 30 years. And thousands of migratory birds, including flamingo, returned to Mumbai after a long period. Ganga was polluted at Haridwar, but now after lockdown days, Ganga water at Haridwar we can convert it to potable water by just by a simple treatment. So, and also reported many animals also spotted at different cities. Puma, a type of animal like tiger, appeared in the roads of San Diego in Chile. And peacocks and wild goats migrated to the roads of Spain from the nearby forest. So we can see, because of the COVID, the sorrows of human beings are not ending. Even the cases in Kerala is increasing. But when we consider the environment, because of the overexploitation, it was polluted, where air, water, and also resources are depleted. Now, because of the quarantine and lockdowns, there is a change in the environment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joy, for giving your views on the impact, COVID-19 impact on environment. And according to Dr. Joy, earlier when the pollution level was so high, but after the COVID-19, because of the lockdown, the traffic was not there. Even the exports and all the supply chains have stopped. And that's why the pollution level has come down heavily. And he mentioned about the air quality at Ghaziabad as well as New Delhi and in Trivandrum and Kochi and other places. And he says drastically changed the air quality, which was about 200 AQI in Delhi, it has come to 20. Now, it shows that the positive impact of the COVID-19, because the industries were closed. There was no traffic, no movements were there due to the lockdown. And he has given example that how the wildlife is now come out in the open streets, and even in the marine life, you can spot even dolphins after so many years. The migratory birds have started coming back to India, like flamingo, etc., in Mumbai especially. So he says that is a very, very positive sign. Although there is a cases are increasing everywhere, I mean in Kerala, but of the coronavirus, but the impact on the pollution is very positive, according to Dr. Joy. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for giving your views. Now I would like to invite my next guest. He is Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, is one-man expert commission on labor to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the workforce in the context of COVID-19. He is also the principal advisor, Government of India Heritage Project. He was the principal secretary, Animal Husbandry, Forest, Environment and Wildlife. He was the chairman of Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, SPCA. He has authored 40 books in English, Malayalam and Hindi, including novels, short stories and essays. 4 of his books have become bestsellers. Dr. Bose is an housing expert, innovator, writer, orator and visionary. The path-breaking institutions set up by him, such as Nimriti Kendra, Building Center, District Tourism Council and Habitat Alliance, have been replicated at the state, national and global level. He was the head of the prestigious Supreme Court Committee on the Treasures of Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple. Dr. Bose addressed United Nations General Assembly and specialized sessions 5 times on various international issues. Dr. Bose is a recipient of 31 national and international awards, including United Nations Global Best Practice Award. He also received prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. Kerala government termed him Lord of Ideas. Former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh called him inspired civil servant, and our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi called him Man of Ideas. Welcome, Dr. Bose, on our show. Dr. Bose, you have heard what Dr. Joy has mentioned. He mentioned that although the cases are increasing and because of the COVID-19, the life has been paralyzed, but it's a very, very positive impact as far as environment is concerned. And he has also mentioned how the wildlife has started coming back to the city, how even the tortoise are laying their eggs in those places which they were not giving, and the air quality in New Delhi, the Ghaziabad, even in Trivandrum and other places in the country have improved drastically. And he says whatsoever is because of the COVID-19, the cases are increasing, but the impact of COVID-19 is very positive as far as environment is concerned. Now, we would like to know the COVID-19 impact on environment. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. I was listening with rapt attention to the words of Dr. Joy, who is a well-known authority in this field. He has really set a tone for the discussion. When he said about wild animals roaming the streets of the cities, I am reminded of what Francis Thompson once asked Mahatma Gandhi. How came wild animals are depleting in the forest? Gandhiji said, they are depleting in the forest, but they are increasing in the cities. I think this has come to be true literally now. In fact, I am one who would say 3 cheers for COVID, a very, very unpopular statement, but I have been justified by what Dr. Joy has already given here with evidence. It is said, the detractors once asked about Jesus Christ, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Then they realized what it means. And every poet, every philosopher, every mythologist, every writer has also given the same idea in his own or her own way about the change that can happen, the transformation that can happen, which makes the negative to the positive. Now here is Keats, who said, "The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing." The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. He also said, "If winter comes, can spring be far behind?" That is a note of optimism. From COVID also, we find there are certain great things that has happened in the world. COVID has served as an unseen link which unites mankind with nature. That certainly is a positive aspect. In Hindu mythology or Indian ethos, we believe tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Darkness will go and light will come. As far as environment is concerned, COVID has taught us the essential umbilical relationship which should exist between man and nature, which has been destroyed by the greed of the people. As Gandhiji said, the earth has everything for man's needs, but not his greed. But unfortunately, we kept on destroying Mother Earth. And now, COVID has taught us a lesson: live in tune with nature. That is your only hope. Now, what actually has happened in the post-COVID days or during COVID, as far as environment is concerned? Dr. Joy has really listed out the various salient features of that. But I would like to present before the listeners something authentic which has been circulated by the Lok Sabha Secretariat. They said the air quality index, AQI, of 78% cities was good and satisfactory during the COVID day lockdown. 44% cities in the pre-locked phase, of the 20 most polluted cities in the world, 15 are in India. Even now, the air pollution in Delhi has drastically come down. As Dr. Joy said, what happened in China, 25% of the carbon dioxide emission has come down, which is equivalent to saving 77,000 lives, which he has already pointed out here. The drop could be attributed to restricted vehicle movement. This is analysis of the Central Pollution Control Board, as circulated officially by the Parliament, the Lok Sabha Secretariat. The drop could be attributed to restricted vehicle movement, halt on construction activities, less road dust recuperations, and curb on industrial activities. You see? So we cannot see COVID as a negative factor at all. As far as environmental protection is concerned, COVID has been a trigger which made us realize the need for air protection and also take action, proactive action in that. Ganga's water along its most polluted stretch in Uttar Pradesh, is carrying more dissolved oxygen and less nitrates. We never thought it's a possibility. Dr. Joy has highlighted what happened in Haridwar. I had been there. I used to go there because I teach in the Mussoorie Academy, which is nearby. So polluted it was, but now it is potable water, drinking water. That is a change. And now there are several reports of the Dhaulatar range in Himachal Pradesh, again being visible from Jalandhar. Not only that, from Siliguri, Kanchenjunga is now visible. And most remarkably, the nationwide lockdown has considerably reduced municipal solid waste generation. So now industrial activity has been slowed down, traffic has been slowed down, air has been protected, water has been protected, earth has been protected. What more do you need for the future generation to build upon? But it is upon it is bent on us. It's our bounden duty to see that we do not repeat the sins which we have committed earlier. I am reminded of the Russian mystic P.D. Ouspensky. Ouspensky speaks about the strange life of Ivan Osokin. Osokin is the sum total of all the sins on earth. A wicked character. He dies. He goes to the upper world where the president of the immortals, they cannot find a proper punishment for Osokin. So what they do is they send Osokin back to earth to live as Osokin, repeat his sins and repent for life. Are we a generation like Osokin? Now we have been sent back. We have an opportunity to repent for our sins to nature and also correct ourselves. Are we going to live like Osokin, the same sins, life of sins, or are we going to change? I think the message, which loud and clear message, which COVID has given us is to this generation, please have an inward search. Please make this world a better place for the future generation to live in. I think that is the greatest environment message, which I think COVID-19 is teaching us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. And according to Dr. Bose, the environment has improved drastically, and he endorsed what Dr. Joy has said. But he says, because this is man created, we have destroyed our forest, we have cut the trees, and if we are doing this, that's why the nature has rebounded. And now one lesson which is very clear, that we have to respect the nature. And he says this young generation should understand that if they will give the respect to the nature, then definitely the pollution level, which has come drastically down, will be there, and they can live happily. And he has given examples of the Ganges, how polluted it was, and now it's a potable water one can drink there. And he has given the examples of the cities, as well as he quoted what Mahatma Gandhi has said about that somebody asked about the wildlife animals, why they are depleted in the forest. And he says that Mahatma Gandhi said that they are depleted in forest, but they are coming in the city in a lighter vein. But now it is true, because we have spotted many of the wildlife in the cities. And he says now you can view the Himalayan range from the far away places. So all these things are because of the positive impact of the COVID-19. But it's a lesson. It's not that we are happy or we are not happy. We are happy, yes, there is no pollution. But till when? Because if we will again do the same sins what we have done earlier, then the same thing will happen. It is not going to improve anything. But if we will continue with what has happened now and we try to maintain it, definitely it will be beneficial for the mankind. Thank you, Dr. Bose, for giving your views about the COVID-19 impact on environment. Now I would like to invite my next guest. He is Mr. Siddharth Goel. Mr. Goel is the founder and CEO of Rethinking Public Policy, an environmental consulting firm. He also works as a senior consultant at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. He has previously worked as an assistant political advisor at the British High Commission in New Delhi. He was legislative assistant to a member of parliament in India. He holds a Master of Public Administration degree from Columbia University, USA. He is a regular contributor to LiveMint, The Print, and The Wire. Welcome, Mr. Siddharth Goel, on our show. Mr. Goel, you have heard what Dr. Joy as well as Dr. Bose has mentioned about the COVID-19 impact on environment. And Dr. Joy has clearly mentioned that because of the restriction and the lockdown, the environment has become very clear. The pollution has gone down. Even he mentioned that the wildlife has been spotted in the cities, as well as the marine life. Even you can spot the dolphins, etc. And he says this is only possible because the lockdown and the restriction of the traffic. Dr. Bose has given the examples, and he says that if this will continue, if we will continue, keep it, the young generation, especially if they consider that this pollution level which has come down, if we maintain it, it is very good for the humanity. And he says otherwise, if we will do the same sin and we will repeat and we will go for the same pollution level, then it will be harmful for all of us. Now, we would like to know from you the COVID-19 impact on environment. Mr. Goel, please.
Thank you for having me on this show and to share this platform with such esteemed co-panelists. Dr. Joy and Dr. Bose have given a very good overview of the impact of COVID-19 on the environment, especially in India. And I completely agree with what they were saying, like things like the impact on clean, like the ability to enjoy clean blue skies for the first time in many cities, cleaner water, the rebounding of wildlife. I think personally, even for myself, growing up in Mumbai, I've rarely, taken a walk on the beach and there's been clean blue skies. So for an entire generation of Indians, I think this has been an eye-opening moment. But really the question remains whether this public awareness of the environment is likely to sustain itself beyond the pandemic. And I mean, to be honest, I have my doubts because, if you take into consideration the air pollution in New Delhi, which is primarily, seasonal, it's very often there's a big outrage, in the winter months when there's a lot of crop burning, which leads to a spike in air pollution. But then often when it comes to summer months or the monsoon, other more pressing issues become the talk of the town. So really, there's a need for a more democratic demand for cleaner air in India and cleaner water. And there's a need for the environment to become an important electoral issue, which will compel policymakers and politicians to respond with, proactive action. And I think, some of the statistics that Dr. Joy mentioned, which is a drop of 25% in CO2 emissions and as well as air pollution in many Chinese cities. Just recently, NASA has released satellite images which show that much of the air pollution that had decreased in these cities has rebounded. And a lot of the CO2 emissions are also back to the earlier levels, pre-pandemic levels. It's important to recognize that, yes, this did cause a temporary drop, but, there's a strong chance of it rebounding once normal human activity resumes. And really, that brings me to my second point, which is the important role of governments in designing economic stimulus packages as well as packages that respond to COVID-19 that take into account environmental concerns. So one of the areas that the International Institute for Sustainable Development is looking at is really tracking some of the pledges that G20 governments have made during the COVID-19 crisis. And what we found is that during this COVID-19 crisis, G20 governments have pledged $169 billion to fossil fuels and only $138 billion to clean energy. So despite the fact that there's been increased awareness of the environment, most countries are still investing heavily in fossil fuels during this period. And the risk is that in the coming years, in the rush to stimulate the economy, there might be a lot of fossil fuels might be promoted, which would actually reverse a lot of the gains during the COVID-19 crisis. So a similar trend was seen after the 2008 financial recession, where there was a fall in global CO2 emissions during that year. But then in the following year, because there was a significant stimulus package given, CO2 emissions rebounded at a much higher level. So it's very important for countries around the world to take into account environmental considerations. Just coming to India, for example, the large stimulus package that was announced, it was to a certain extent sector agnostic. So it didn't focus on specifically providing, it did focus on like SMEs, but it didn't focus on specific sectors like, for example, the energy or transport sector. There was one element in the package which included a 90,000 crore stimulus for electricity utility companies or DISCOMs to help them, because they have accumulated a high amount of debt. So some of the research that we've conducted has shown that this package is likely to benefit thermal power producers disproportionately, because these are the producers that have the highest debt with electricity DISCOMs. So a large amount of this package could be used to actually bail out these thermal power producers. When multiple analysis has shown that new renewable energy sources are more cost competitive than thermal power plants. So, there needs to be a conversation about potentially retiring some of these inefficient thermal power plants. And I guess that comes to my third point, which is the fact that there needs to be a change in mindset where we can't consider the environment and the economy separately. They are not, there's not a trade-off between environmental protection and economic development. Both of these factors are completely interlinked with each other. So it's very important for the environment to take a major role in economic development planning moving forward in India.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Goel, for giving your views. And according to Mr. Siddharth Goel, whatsoever gains were there for the environment due to the COVID-19 lockdown, it is we are losing those gains, and he has given the example of China that initially, yes, that 25% less emission of CO2 and other polluting gases were there, but now the recent pictures of NASA shows that it is again coming to the same level which it was pre-COVID. And he says, unless the policymakers, the politicians will not think seriously, it is not possible to sustain whatsoever the benefits the environment has got because of the COVID-19. As according to him, the economy and the environment are interlinked. We should not do it separately. He also mentioned that there is a stimulus package which was given to for the MSMEs and especially to the DISCOM about the power plants. He says the maximum portion of the 90,000 crores are going for thermal plants, which according to Mr. Goel, it should not be like that, because these thermal plants are polluting more and we should retire those power plants. Rather, we should go for another alternative energy in the country. And he says that the country requires a proper policy for the environment. And he has also given the example of Delhi because he says that during the winter, when the crops will be burned, again the pollution will be there. Right now, there is no pollution thanks to COVID-19. But what is going to happen during the winter? Again, we have to see. So according to Mr. Goel, we have to change our mindset. We must think about the environment as we are thinking about our economy. Thank you, Mr. Goel, for giving your views. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Bose. Dr. Bose, you worked as a principal secretary in charge of forest and environment, and you have lots of experience in that. And you also participated in international thermonuclear energy projects and other projects. What are your personal experiences in the field of environmental conservation? Because right now, what all our panelists, even you have spoken, that's a very good time for the environment. But are we going to maintain it in future, or we will go in the same thing what has happened the pre-COVID era? Dr. Bose, please.
As Mr. Siddharth has rightly pointed out, what is required is a change in our mindset. Since crimes against nature begins in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that defenses against it are to be built. You have drawn attention to two areas of experience which I had in this field. One, as a representative of the government of India, in the International Thermonuclear Energy Experiment, ITER, which has got all the nuclear countries of the world, India being an equal partner. The idea there is to replace fossil fuel. The idea is to create endless non-polluting energy, as it is done in the sun. This is done by fusion of deuterium with tritium, two isotopes. Endless energy will be there. That will be non-polluting energy. This is a process which takes place in the sun. And they have really tried to replicate the sun on Earth. Millions of degrees Celsius is the temperature within the what is called tokamak. This particular experimental station is called tokamak. This is a place where this experiment is taking place. Endless energy. But I'm not a scientist. I just happen to be an officer representing government of India. As T.S. Eliot said, I am no Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. I am an attendant lord. There also, I was an attendant civil servant. Therefore, since my ignorance was bliss for me, I used to ask a scientist in a lighter vein, you are creating endless energy here. Will you be able to hold it? A simple question. Are we able to hold it? Isn't it going to be the Frankenstein's monster, which is going to be self-destructive? There is a story of Prometheus. Prometheus, the Titan, he stole the secrets of energy, secrets of fire, and gave it to the people. He was punished by Zeus. Why? Because human beings cannot handle energy. what is a guarantee that this endless energy will not be used for military purposes? What is the guarantee that this energy will be used only for peaceful purposes? A pilot in a panic may press the button and end the whole world. Even now, that is the situation. Therefore, as Siddharth said, and Dr. Joy implied, there is need for a change of mindset. How to handle these destructive forces, which will ultimately end up in destroying the universe. That is what, in the famous, legendary, momentous book on environment, I would say the eye-opener on this, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, she is quoting in the beginning itself what Albert Schweitzer said: man has lost the ability to foresee and forearm. He may end up destroying the universe. I think all our processes, which is said to be for the prosperity of mankind, if that will ultimately use as a weapon to destroy nature, we should have this mindset, change in mindset. I think before policies are formulated, this is very important. And number two, your question about my experience as a Principal Secretary of Forest and Environment. You know, it is wanton destruction of environment that we see around us. Of course, there are voices of sanity, like Dr. Joy and his group, which makes the administrators, the planners, the policy makers, and the ministers see the reason in forest management. But as one who has worked in that field, I tell you, there is wanton destruction of forest which takes place all over India. In Kerala in particular, where I worked, the first one was for the national scene, representing Ministry of Department of Atomic Energy. The second experience is confined to the state. There, you know, we see don't play with fire. You know, when it comes to forest fire, we do play with fire. Forest fire, hardly 30% is because of natural reasons. Yes, around 30% is because of lightning and the rubbing of trees, especially bamboo. All 70% is man-made fire. It is said, accidents are not accidental. Yes, forest destruction of forest is not accidental. The poachers, especially those who come to cut trees to destroy evidence, they set fire to the tree, which may go uncontrolled. So forest fire, looting of forest. Earlier we had something called clear felling. Now, because of the environmentalist objection, that was selected as selection felling. Now even that is not allowed. But in spite of all these things, our forests are getting failed. The environment is being polluted at every stretch. Now, what is the relevance? In fact, Siddharth rightly said, unless this becomes a political issue, it is not going to make sense. When there's a choice between environment and economics, always the political choices for economics. We should now make them realize what does not make environmental sense will not make economic sense. What does not make economic sense will not make political sense. That is where the political part of it comes. Now, well, Sab, if you give me just 1 minute, we have various instruments at the global level, which are certainly calculated to ensure that we protect our environment. We have the Paris Agreement of 2015, very powerful, where India is also a signatory. We have the Kyoto Protocol 1997, where America, which emits the maximum quantity of carbon dioxide, they refuse to be a part of that. International Solar Alliance 2015, Siddharth also said, instead of thermal power, it is high time that we give more incidence on solar power. We have the International Solar Alliance of 2015. United Nations Environment Program is there, UNEP, which was for a long time headed by Klaus Stoffer, the eminent environmentalist from Germany. United Nations Convention to combat desertification. Yes, desertification is also one of the major themes, which unfortunately goes unnoticed in this kind of discussion. Then the Montreal Protocol is there. I don't want to go at length, but International Carbon Action Partnership is there. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Convention on Biological Diversity, the Cartagena Protocol on Biodiversity. It is not that we do not have instruments for implementing it, but the willpower is not there. The willpower is now coming because COVID has taught us, unless we take corrective steps, unless there is mid-course correction, COVID can come again. As Xi Jinping, though he has done so many things which are not acceptable to the whole world, including his atrocities on India, he made a statement. It is during calamities that great things have happened in history. I feel the greatest thing that can happen in history, never make any investment unless it is conducive to the environment. I think what does not make environmental sense should not make economic sense. What does not make economic sense should not make political sense. I think unless there is strong political will that we are beholden to nature and we owe everything to nature and our children, it is said we have not inherited this universe from our forefathers. We have borrowed it from our children. And what we have borrowed, we should have the decency to pay it back with interest. I think let that be the message which COVID teaches as far as environment is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose, for giving your forceful reply. And you said, yes, there are, you have lots of experiences. And you mentioned about the forest fire. He says that there are 30% forest fire is natural because of lightning, etc. But 70% are the man-made fires. And this is why the environment has been gone very bad because of the destruction of the forest. And he has also mentioned that because he has attended so many seminars and the projects, especially in the nuclear field, and he has raised one question very particularly about that when they were planning to have a very sun-like thing in the world, on the earth. So he said that when we will have so much energy, how we are going to hold it, or we are going to use it for the army or for the destruction of the countries, which they have not replied in a proper way. But yes, once we will have that power, we can use it or misuse it. But he says there are lots of international pacts are there. We have those things, but the lack of willpower is there. And he endorsed what Mr. Siddharth says, that yes, we require a mindset, which is required today. And it should be not only for the public, but it should be for the political and the policy makers. Only then the mindset will be changed. Thank you, Dr. Bose, for giving such a forceful reply to my question. Now I would like to go to Dr. Joy. Dr. Joy, what is the impact of virtual environmental clearance of projects during the pandemic? Because what happens now, due to the pandemic, so many clearance has been given virtually without proper site inspection, without checking each and everything. And but definitely these clearances which have been given virtually, do you think what is will be the impact of virtual environmental clearance of projects during the pandemic? Dr. Joy, please.
It will make the same problem that we are facing now, because see, we know that using the problem we are facing is pollution, that is because of the over exploitation of natural resources. If you continue that, that means if you are allowing the projects without any studies or environmental impact assessment, that means we are allowing the company or that industry to giving the clean chit for making pollution. I told you, see, during the COVID time, many of the industries are asking for to lift the ban on the restriction to the plastic pollution. So like that, so it will be again a problem for the world. And it is, as Siddharth told, even during COVID time, there was a reduction in the carbon dioxide in China, but now it is rebounded back. Same thing. So such things will be making problems. So one thing I want to point it out is, see, we cannot develop without studying the carrying capacity. A carrying capacity, we have to see the carrying capacity of that area. And without that, we cannot proceed. We cannot proceed because see, one time will come, we cannot go a bit, because we will not have oxygen to breathe. We cannot do anything. You see, especially an example is Western Ghats of Kerala. See, last three years continuously there is a torrential rains, and Gadgil committee report mentioned that it should be protected, especially certain areas are very crucial for landslides. But no, nothing has happened. But what happened? See, now every year there is landslides, and the people are buried in soil. So that is happening. So this year also some 82 people buried in the soil and they died. And so we have to do something to protect the environment. Otherwise, you cannot live there. So without oxygen, without other facilities, you cannot live. So you have to use the natural resources judiciously, and not your greedy nature. So as Mahatma Gandhi told, so everything is here for your need. It is not for your greed.
Okay, everything here is for your need, not for your greed, says Dr. C.M. Joy. And he says that yes, the virtual clearances, environmental clearances which were given during the pandemic is going to be a disaster, because they are taking all the permissions right now virtually without a proper inspection, without doing the proper assessment. And he has given an example of the Kerala, where the Gadgil report has mentioned very clearly that we must do for the environment protection, but no action has been taken for last 3 years. Heavy rains are there, and every year landslides takes many of the lives, sadly, and this year also 82 people buried because of the landslides. And he says unless the governments will not take proper action, it is not possible to clear the environment and protect the environment. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for giving your reply. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Siddharth. Yes, we all know the problems. We know that there are problems going to happen again once the COVID-19 will be not there. But how can India play the role of a global leader on environmental protection and climate change? Mr. Siddharth Goel, please.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think, it's a multifaceted response I'd like to give. So the first response is that India is already playing the role of a global leader in providing support to clean energy like solar and wind. If you look at the deployment numbers, India has significantly ramped up its renewable energy capacity since 2014. And that has primarily come through strong government support. So for example, subsidies for clean energy and electric vehicles have grown by almost 3.5 times during that period. But the challenge really is it's a legacy problem. So even though subsidies now for clean energy and electric vehicles are around 10,000 crores per year, subsidies for fossil fuels, so oil, gas, coal, etc., are almost 80,000 crores a year. So it's almost 7 times greater than clean energy subsidies. And this is based on some of the research that's put out by the International Institute of Sustainable Development every year. So India can play a very important role globally by reducing some of these subsidies that are provided to fossil fuel plants and redeploying these subsidies both in terms of boosting economic growth as well as to promote clean energy and help communities. For example, there are many communities like in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh that are heavily reliant on coal power plants, and coal mining. So they can utilize these resources that are provided for subsidies to actually help these communities diversify away from coal mining towards alternate sources of livelihoods. So that would be a very important statement that India could make at a global level. And I guess India, as I mentioned, it is playing a very constructive role in international forum. Like it played a pioneering role in the creation of an international solar alliance, which aims to support the financing of solar plants in developing countries around the world. India, I mean, if you look at some of the numbers that are put out by the Climate Action Tracker, India is one of the countries that is well on track to meeting its commitments at the Paris Climate Change Summit. And many developed countries also are quite behind, and they're quite behind on their commitments. So India is well on track. What it can do is it can look to ramp up some of its commitments in the coming years, because as we've seen, the cost of new renewable energy generation is already falling lower than that of new coal power plants. And that's not even taking into account the health and air pollution problems and costs that coal power plants entail. So just given the fact that the renewable energy is already cheaper in India, it's a good opportunity to ramp up some of the commitments that India has made in the Paris Climate Summit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goel. And what Mr. Goel says that yes, India is playing a very important role as a global leader on environmental protection and climate change. And he has given the examples. He says how the India is playing even in the role in the Paris Pact and other global environmental pacts, where the proactive role has been played by the Indian government. But he says although the government has put 10,000 crores for the subsidies for the alternative energies or for the savings of the polluted energy, but he says the other 70 or 80,000 crores are going for those which are polluting the environment, like thermal and other plants. So he says the government should do what government should do, that they should reduce the subsidy for the polluting industries and give it to those who are doing this cleaning more the environment. And he says from 2014 the government has taken a very, very bold step in this particular field. And he says because of the legacy we have to suffer, but definitely the India is already playing, but India can ramp up its more sources and see to it that they will fulfill all the commitments which they have made. And according to Mr. Goel, many developed countries are not fulfilling their commitment what they have made on international forum, but India is far ahead of them. So he says that India is definitely playing a global leader as far as the environmental and climate changes are concerned. Thank you, Mr. Goel, for giving your views very positively, and I'm sure that we Indians are proud of it, that our government is doing so much work for the climate, saving the environment. Now I would like to ask Dr. Bose. Dr. Bose, what are the major global initiatives? Okay, we have spoken about India, but what are the major global initiatives in the protection of environment? Because we have to see, after all, we alone can't do everything. So much pollution from the air traffic and all those unconventional or the conventional things. So we have to see what we have to do now, and we have to know what are the major global initiatives in the protection of environment. Dr. Bose, please.
See, as far as global initiatives are concerned, I think ever since the Stockholm conference, the world has been made aware of the need to conserve environment. Even in India, we thought of a new ministry during the days of Mrs. Gandhi. After a long, long hiatus in the field and a lot of deliberations, I see the United Nations as still the agency which should lead this international global initiative for environmental conservation. If you ask me to trace the history of global efforts, I would still go back to Rachel Carson's book, The Silent Spring. See, the history of the book is important. America felt and made it American policy of spraying DDT. DDT was considered to be the panacea for all the ills of agriculture or the ills of people. And the entire country was sprayed with DDT. When, from airplanes, they started spraying it indiscriminately. It took a long time to realize that this was all the ploy of the chemical industry. What the chemical industry decided became through lobby, government's policy, leading to the destruction of human lives and pollution of environment in a big way. Even among the animals, among the birds in the sea, traces of DDT was seen. Even in the breast milk of Eskimo women, DDT was seen. Then only the world came to realize the ill effects of DDT. I think it was this crusade against DDT which was fought violently by the lobbies. Rachel Carson was even dubbed as an anti-social element. Then it snowballed into a big movement. Then, of course, Ralph Nader came. I do not want to go into the history of that, but I think now in the COVID days, in spite of all the great strides that have been made in the global scenario, I would still say the word of caution sounded by Rachel Carson still holds good. Yes, man has lost the ability to foresee and forestall it appears we will end up destroying the universe. Now to your question. I have a feeling this COVID days also taught us that many of the global institutions which are formulated with great ideas have failed. I'm sorry to say, the WHO has failed. WHO. Now people are asking, WHO, who? That's the question which is surrounding. And the United Nations. Where is the impact of the United Nations now? The United Nations has formed to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. Is there a greater war which man is fighting now than the war against pandemic? Where is the impact of these institutions? I think there should be a new institutional build-up in the post-COVID days. The world has realized that those countries which could take proactive steps alone could combat COVID in an effective manner. That there is a paradigm shift. I think global institutions should come. Existing global pacts and instruments have to be reviewed so that there is action, not an alibi for inaction. I think that is the message which COVID is giving. Now, who is to blame? I do not want to blame the institutions. I only wanted to point out that the institutions should also evolve. What you have created for yesterday may not be able to deliver for tomorrow. I think there should be rethinking as to answer your question. What are the global instruments? What are the global institutions? What are the global approaches? What are the global alliances? What should be the narrative for the global efforts in the future? I think it's an excellent question which is thrown here. It's a primordial question which requires to be debated and an answer has to be found. Now, taking things in a lighter vein, I remember an industrialist, Shankaran Nair from Kerala. He went to the United States for a vast expansion project. He was staying in Waldorf Astoria, the presidential suite of Waldorf Astoria. Then, about midnight, the hotel lobby gets a disturbed call from Mr. Shankaran Nair. He said, "My wife is fighting with me. Please come and find a solution to this." And they know he's a big industrialist occupying the presidential suite. So the senior management discussed with each other and said politely, "Sir, this is a personal matter, a fight between you and your wife. The management reserves its difficulties to intervene in this." After some time, they again get a call from Shankaran Nair. "No, this is not a personal matter. This is an administrative matter of the hotel." "Sir, how?" He said, "This woman has been threatening me. She will jump out of the window 3 times. You opened it, try to open it, but the window is not opening. Please solve it. It's not a personal matter. It's your systemic matter." So we are also telling the global organizations, yes, COVID is here. COVID wants to get out of the window. It's not opening. Therefore, new institutions should be there. There should be new ways of paying old debts. Yes, the concept of advocacy is irrelevant here. As Alvin Toffler said, during normal days, yes, your bureaucracy, your system, the protocol, the Paris Agreement, everything is okay. But this is not a normal system. It's a new situation. Therefore, we need not bureaucratic rules and procedure or precedents. No. We want action. We want immediate action. We want effective action. Therefore, advocacy has to rule the roost in the post-COVID days as far as international protocols and international institutions are concerned. I think we are in for a change. That is what the new generation wants. For the new generation, let there be new generation agreements and new generation institutions. I think that is the need of the hour. Thank you.
The need of the hour is the new generation industry or new generation for the global initiatives, says Dr. Bose. And according to Dr. Bose, the global initiative taken by the United Nations or WHO failed miserably. He says the people are asking who to the WHO, and he mentioned that United Nations was established for the safety of the people at large in all the countries, but they failed miserably because this war is going on and United Nations is not to be seen. But he says that it can be changed only when the new things will come. And he has given even the example earlier that how the this environment was destroyed by spreading the DDT heavily because of the lobbying. And until we will not stop these lobbyings, it is not possible. And it was done earlier, but now again, we have to see that how we can change the environment positively. Thank you, Dr. Bose, for giving your reply. Now I'm asking, I'm going to Dr. Joy. Dr. Joy, what are some unique policies of schemes being implemented for environmental protection in Kerala? How can they be improved? You have mentioned that there was a Gadgil report on the Western Ghat, and but nothing has taken. But any other, after all, so many things have happened in Kerala in last few years. We would like to know from you, what are some unique policies or schemes being implemented for environmental protection in Kerala? How can they be improved? Dr. Joy, please. Please unmute. Dr. Joy, please unmute.
I'm sorry to say, see, there is no large schemes or projects which implemented to save any of the environmental things. So there is, I told you, there is a project, and there is a list of things. Things has to be done based on the Gadgil committee report. There is another about the forest. Forest also, there are many suggestions represented by different committees. And also regarding the natural resources, utilizing the granite quarry again, and also making roads through the forest area, and making demolishing of the hills and mountains. And again, we can see the encroachment of the forest area, and also encroachment of the common land or government revenue lands, that may be the banks of rivers, that may be the banks of estuaries, that may be the forest land. So there is no action. Everything is if you tell anything, it will be politicized. So this is this will not happen here. And there will be answer for everything, but they will not do anything. So a state of paralysis. So no development without the environmental protection. That is happening. So I'm not blaming the government, but most of the governments are which administered Kerala. They said they will protect the rivers of Kerala. We have 43 rivers, 44 rivers. 40 out of 44 rivers, 41 are flowing from the east to west. So we have 41 west flowing rivers. That is the reason why we are getting drinking water. Without drinking water, we cannot live. I am living in the city that is Cochin city. We are very inside the Cochin city. It is where we are getting water from a river called Periyar, which is some 10 kilometers away from the city. And but there are a number of industries which is polluting this river. So we are getting polluted water many a time. So nobody cares. Even government is not caring about the protection of the river. That is the main problem. So if an industry come, there also they get by hook or crook, they get the NOC. They started working. And most of the industries on the banks of the rivers, they are saying that they got a clean chit from the government and discharging their effluents directly into the river. Because once that was during 1948, most of the industries were invited to form an industrial area there. And then the government told them, you can discharge. You can put any waste into the rivers, and you can discharge your effluents. But what happened? See, after some 40-50 years, the number of industries increased. And that is some 200 to 2,000 or 3,000 industries came in same area, and with the same clean chit, they are polluting the rivers. And the same water is pumped to a city which is getting potable water. So that is the situation in Kerala. And we have to any government which is ruling Kerala should take adequate measures to protect the environment. Otherwise, life in Kerala will be very difficult.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joy. And he says that no government, whosoever has ruled Kerala, has given any heed to the committee reports. So many committee reports were given to them as far as the environment is concerned. And he says that they are giving the permissions to the industries without taking consideration of the environment protection. He has given the example of Cochin, and he says that there is a Periyar River, which is flowing about 10 kilometers away from the Cochin. There is an industrial town, which was earlier industries were allowed in 1948 because few of the industries came, and they were allowed to put their extra water or the polluted water in the river. But now when there are 2,000 to 3,000 industries in the same area, they are using the same clean sheet what was given in 1948, and no one till now, no government has taken any action, and they are not giving, and they are not taking any connivance of the whatsoever the reports were submitted by the environmentalists about the protection. And he says, according to Dr. Joy, if the environment protection was not given by the government, it's very, very difficult to live with a pure air and the pure water in Kerala. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for giving your reply. Now I would like to go to Mr. Siddharth Goel. Mr. Goel, you have mentioned about the economy and environment. Now, I would like to know, COVID has given us a taste of clean air in cities. We agree. But obviously, we can't stay in lockdown forever. So what are some ways in which we can have economic development and clean air at the same time? Mr. Goel, please.
That's a really good question. I think one of the key things that India should look at is to shift its approach to environmental regulation. So currently we focus on very much command and control environmental regulation. So to give an example, if you own an industrial unit, and you cross a certain pollution threshold, then potentially the unit can be closed down. But the challenge with that is that firstly, there's very weak enforcement, because very often, if you potentially pay a bribe, then you can get away with it. So India needs to move away from this model to a more market-based approach towards environmental regulation. So what do I mean by that is that suppose you take a industrial cluster, let's say in Kerala, there are 200 units there. So let's say each industrial unit is then given allowances that you're allowed to emit only a certain amount of pollution in the year. And industrial units that emit beyond that amount, they can trade those allowances with other industrial units that potentially emit less than the limit. So that creates an incentive for most industrial units to install better technology to reduce their emissions. And also it's more feasible and more enforceable by a government official. So, I mean, there have been obviously a number of, cases like, high profile cases like the Sterlite plant, which was shut down. While obviously there were, significant environmental concerns, it's important to take into account economic and energy security concerns as well, when taking decisions. So so I feel like if India implements this market-based approach to environmental regulation, you can have both economic growth as well as incentives to protect the environment. And just to give you an example, Gujarat has been piloting an emission trading scheme in Surat, which is exactly what I basically spoke about, which is that amongst like diamond as well as other rock cutting industrial clusters, they've implemented a scheme where there's an overall limit on how much pollution that industrial cluster can emit, and then each industry is allocated allowances of based on that limit, and each year the overall limit is reduced, and industries can trade between themselves these permissions. So in the same way, in terms of tackling climate change, something that's being discussed globally is a price on carbon. So essentially what that means is that every unit of carbon dioxide that's emitted, each industrial unit has to pay a certain price, so a carbon price, and that's an incentive for them to reduce their carbon emissions by installing cleaner technology. And at the same time, the revenues that are generated can be redeployed towards financing renewables or improving the quality of policies in tackling some of these challenges?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goel. And what he says, the solution is like that we must come out for the market-based for the environment clearances, and it is that you can have a cluster of industries. He has given an example that if suppose there is a cluster of industry in a state like Kerala, and 200 industries are there, government can fix up the upper limit of that industrial area, total industrial area, and if one industry is emitting some more, they can buy from those industries which are less polluted. Ultimately, the less polluted industries are getting incentive because they are being paid, and the more polluted industries will definitely try to put more equipments, more new technology, so that they need not to pay. So that he says that it is something which is tried even in Gujarat, where the diamond and other clusters have been made, and they are doing successfully. And he says that internationally there is a charge for there should be a charge for this about the carbon emittance, and if that charge one has to pay if you are emitting any number of carbon, amount of carbon, and that charge can be used internationally for the benefit of the environment. Thank you, Mr. Goel, for giving this view, because whenever we talk, we always feel that if we are going for environment, the economy will go down. But yes, there are solutions we have, and that's why our program is we should find solutions and give positive suggestions to the government, not only the problems. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Bose. Dr. Bose, there have been a lot of public controversy over the draft Environmental Impact Assessment Amendment Bill. Could you please share the government's perspective on this bill? Although it is a bill has nothing to do with COVID, but definitely the bill will impact post-COVID era. After all, this new environmental policy is going to be there, and we have to see what the government actually intend, because by saying that we will give the post setting of the industry, the post clearance, whether it is a good initiative taken by the government, keeping faith on the industry, or it is going to be backfire to the government. Dr. Bose, please.
Yes, Dr. Joy has already pointed out, starting of industries without proper environment impact studies may be misused by the profit-seeking investors. Being a part of government as one-man expert commission, I have my reservations in questioning an existing government's policy, but within my limitations as a part of government now, I would like to analyze it. For some time, the dictum was industrialize or perish. Experience has taught us to change the dictum, industrialize and perish. I'm not a historian, but in hindsight, I would say the worst that has happened to the world in 1 millennia is the industrial revolution. Sorry for saying that. Because the industrial revolution, it increased the opulence of life. But has it contributed to improving the quality of life? If it had, we would not have been enduring many of the ill effects which we are finding it difficult to overcome. Now, any policy, any action which goes contrary to the interests of nature, which upsets the balance between man and nature, is not going to help humanity anymore. Therefore, we should be environmentally conscious before we take economic decisions. Now, India, as M. Tain said, man is a product of time, race, and moment. India has a tradition of centering everything around nature. So our belief is something which supports nature. But the West has not been that. But the West is changing. You see, recently, the European Union has come out with a 1 trillion investment for environment, and 750 billion has been earmarked only if the economic activity will lead to environmental conservation. You see, the necessity for preserving the environment has been felt in the blood and felt along the heart by them. Certainly, India will not lag behind. This policy that has been unleashed, rolled out, I would only see earlier, any legislation during the British Raj was based on distrust of the people, where they did not trust the natives. Everything was regulatory. And now we are not regulatory. We are no more a regulatory administration, we are a development administration. In a development administration, we cannot base everything on distrust of the people. So maybe I see it as a paradigm shift. Let us trust the people, let us assume that they will not upset the environmental conservation laws of the land and will start industries only after observing the environmental proprieties. Maybe this is a type of legislation, type of policy, which believes in the trustworthiness of the people, the credibility of the people. But as Dr. Joy has said, our experience has taught us that this is likely to be misused. See, murder is not permitted. But no policeman comes before every individual and ensures that you don't murder. If you do it, you will be punished. If you violate the rules of environmental conservation, you will be punished. It may not be the inspector Raj which which ensures that you get a permission in the beginning. Maybe I cannot comment on that now because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But certainly legislation should be there, policy should be there. It should all see to it that environmental conservation is observed, not in the breach, but in the observance. That is where we have to wait and see. Otherwise, I do agree with the sentiments that are expressed here by Joy and Siddharth. At any cost, we should ensure that environmental conservation is a reality, not a myth anymore. So whatever is to be rolled out policies or programs or implementation machinery, we have been a soft state. We have legislation, but we do not implement it. That should not be the case. What Joy said is also that we should see that the environmental protection is there. If we just give them permission to do things in any way you want, our experience has been that it will be misused and the profit-seeking investors will not care for the protection of environment. So that is a challenge. I would see this as a challenge, this policy as a challenge. It depends on how it is implemented. And once it is proved that it cannot be implemented, certainly the government has a right to change the policy. Anyway, this is a transition period. And one more thing, people are not going to accept the excuses anymore, whether it is from civil society, whether it is from administrators, whether it is from ministers, whether it is from government. No, people are not going to accept it. I am reminded of an Oxford scholar, and after 85, he visited his alma mater. He went to the main building and said, "Oh, the same old building." Then he comes to his hostel and said, "Oh, the same old hostel." He goes to the room where he occupied when he was a student. "Oh, the same old room." Then he opens the room and then he goes to the cupboard. "Oh, the same old cupboard." He opens the cupboard and he sees a girl hidden inside. And he said, "Oh, the same old trick." The present occupant of the room said, "What do you mean? She's my cousin." And the older man said, "Oh, the same old lie." So whenever it comes to environmental protection, this is what we also hear. Excuses are being paraded and lies are being fronted by the violators. Then tremendous justification of violation. Then the court, the High Court, the Supreme Court, even after the Supreme Court has given a verdict, they still try to sabotage it. Dr. Joy knows it very well. 2 or 3 buildings were just demolished on the orders of the High Court, the Supreme Court of India in Kerala, because they violated environmental rules. So therefore, I think environmental rules, even if it is relaxed, let us hope that it will not lead to a place where finally implosion seems to be the only answer for this. I think we should prove that there is a determinate government And the authorities should take steps to see that whatever is there in the act is also acted upon in the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. And so you have seen today, because of the paucity of the time, I will not be able to take further questions or the suggestions, but I'm sure that whatsoever has been told today by our experts is very, very clear. Yes, COVID-19 has impacted positively for the environment, but now the responsibility is all of us, not only the government, not only the policymaker, but even the civil society, that we should not spoil this environment. We should not pollute our environment by doing those acts which are not desirable, because after all, we have the responsibility for the young generation, the new generation. Thank you for giving your views. I'm sure the viewers have benefited by the expert views given by you. I will only say in the last, I don't want to protect the environment. I want to create a world where the environment doesn't need protection. So now this program, today's program, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring every time a new topic. And tomorrow our topic is very, very interesting. The topic is COVID-19 impact on classical music. Yes, you heard correctly. It's impact on classical music. And the guests are Padam Bhushan Pandit Dr. Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, Classical Mohan Veena Grammy Awardee, Jaipur. Swar Shruti Samrat, Guruvayur, Professor Dr. T.V. Manikandan, Professor Music, Delhi University, New Delhi. Shahenshah-e-Ghazal, Hussain Brothers, Ustad Ahmad Hussain and Ustad Muhammad Hussain, Sangeet Natak Academy Awardee, Jaipur. And Pandit Sukhdev Chaturvedi, Dhrubat vocalist, Darbhanga Gharana, Mumbai. So please tune in tomorrow to watch Media Conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. Thank you, Dr. C.M. Joy. And thank you, Mr. Siddharth Goel, for joining us and giving your expert opinions. Thank you all.